Mental Health Hub, and we have Clint all the way from Australia to talk about his journey and his new book. And today you have Fayahune and Vanessa.
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone.
And Clint, you take it away. I'm excited to hear everything. So all over to you.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. Look, yeah, I guess for me, mental health has been one of those things that evolved over the years into something that I'm now doing, and the book came obviously later. I'm nearly 50 this year, so it's been a bit of a journey. But look, I guess a quick snapshot just to give some insight around how I've come to be where I am doing what I'm doing. So when I left high school, I was really interested in psychology. I was really interested in, probably sounds weird, but serial killers and the whole profiling stuff. This is back in the Silence of the Lambs days and the books of Mindhunter and all that stuff. So really got interested in doing that stuff. So that's why I joined the police force. So I did my science degree in psych and pharmacology, and then literally went into the police force to try and get into a squad that kind of works with what we would call now forensic psych, or the CSI stuff that we all see. I won't bore you with details, but I did nearly 6 years as a cop. And then I decided I wanted to actually get into true counselling. And I then did more studies at Sydney University at the time in Australia. I was the only one really known for doing rehabilitation counselling stuff. So I did that as a postgrad diploma as well. Took me a couple of years to do, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, once I finished the studies, the thing that bothered me about that was that I didn't actually feel competent enough to then go and help people and be a counsellor, and it really bothered me. I kind of felt inadequate around what they were teaching me, and so I did more research myself. I did eventually leave the police force, go and work for a company in rehabilitation counselling, and working with people with PTSD, people who've been bullied, have management issues, a lot of psych issues, people that had physical injuries and they couldn't deal with it, so they had psychological problems as a result of their physical injuries. They lost a leg and stuff like that, and they really had to, have a few demons and having to deal with those things. So, I learned a lot in that space. As luck would have it, if you want to call it that, the police at the time, so Victoria Police is a state police that I worked for in Australia, and as luck would have it, the company I worked for was one of the preferred providers to do counselling for the police. So because people knew who I was and I kind of lived and worked in the same area, they kind of felt comfortable talking to me as an ex-cop and now a counsellor, rather than talking to someone else who's also a counsellor. So I was getting a hell of a lot of work through the police, and they'd request me to be their person to kind of deal with it. So I kind of had a lot of exposure to the police as a counsellor working for a private company. The police then approached me later, like about 18 months, 2 years later, and said, hey, you're doing all this work for us. You're an ex-cop. Why don't you come work for us exclusively? We want to bring this in-house. We don't want to outsource it anymore. So that kind of got me working for the police, went back to the police, started doing all that kind of work and doing a lot of PTSD work, especially, as you can appreciate, police don't always see good things and that kind of stuff. And as a cop, I understand that, and having been there. So, yeah, so it kind of evolved along the way. I then kind of got into doing more program stuff. I was really interested in dealing with people. How can we help the police do better, do things? And then it kind of led into leadership stuff. So even though I was doing the counselling stuff, they then wanted to do programs that could help the police, I guess, de-escalate when they get highly aggressive and all this kind of stuff. So I really got interested in designing programs, working with police. And obviously this is frontline, I guess, responder stuff. Then I got really interested in, at the police, I had this opportunity which came out of nowhere, where the HR manager at the time was having problems himself with his stress levels and stuff. So he came to me to help him as the counsellor kind of stuff. And then in a nutshell, his team wasn't performing very well. They were quite nasty amongst each other. And I'm talking about a big team, about 200 people. Long story short, I got a person to come in and help with that. And I really got interested in the whole organisational psychology stuff how teams interact, leadership, blah, 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 blah. And then I got dragged into being the HR manager for a period to replace him. He couldn't deal with it. He was really stressed by it. And so that's how I got into HR. And then for years, I left the police force, and I worked in a number of different areas and sectors within, as a HR professional and as a change management professional. And then over time, I started really working on how could I help our teams with their health and well-being. So this was back, I'm talking early 2000s, when no one was really talking mental health. I guess I was probably one of the few, and I'd go to as a public speaker and talk to groups and run stuff like that. And then I was doing it at the workplace. When I worked at One Steel was when I really kind of used the model I was applying when I was dealing with people with PTSD to saying, well, there's stuff here that, it's practical to help our teams and they can develop and all that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of where it started. So my Red Brain, Blue Brain program kind of started for best part of, 12 or 13 years ago. And so I was really just helping our teams because, when you're working in industry, so I was working in steel, timber, that kind of stuff, a lot of the people that come there are usually from a lower socioeconomic background. They don't have a lot of skills, blah, blah, blah. So they tend to have more risk factors with mental health. And so for me, it was about helping them. And then as I was running the sessions, I'd get feedback from them saying, wow, I didn't know this stuff about how my brain works, how I make decisions, how I do stuff. Can you come and talk to my kids? So I'm talking to their kids at home, who are having problems with being bullied at school and stuff like that, because they're like, I can't explain this as well as you can, Clint. So it kind of just got me thinking about a lot of things. And then I guess there was a kind of a turning point where I was working for a healthcare provider, so a hospital with a lot of community centres, or community health centres, that kind of help the community. And because I was one of the executive team, I get access to the board reports, and I'd see these horrible stats on 12 and 13-year-olds on antidepressants, on suicide watch, and the psychists to go and see them at home. And you're thinking, 12 and 13, really? I mean, what problems do they really have? I mean, but then, you kind of think back to your police days and you go, you're going into homes where they got poor role models, mum and dad are on drugs or drinking way too much, they're abusive, all this stuff. And then you think these poor kids have got no chance, or not no chance, but, there's just all these stumbling blocks, and it's heartbreaking. So I kind of, that really got me thinking about how can I, because I've done the program work at the police, how can I design a program that's school appropriate that can kind of help these kids? Because we all have this view that, parents are the ones that's supposed to look after the kids. Get that, no problem. But if your parents are absolute, not nice people, I won't swear, the poor kid's got nothing. So then they come to school, at best, you're hoping they come into school, and then the teachers don't know this stuff. They don't understand certain things. So I was really focusing on what I call vital behaviour, where we go, what can we do early on? Because one of the key things I see at work when people are older is, they don't feel comfortable talking to each other if behaviour is bad. They don't go, hey, Clint, you were inappropriate in that. They put up with crap. They don't, no one actually grabs the group and says, right, this is our group. And when I'm running leadership stuff, you do this as adults, but then why aren't we doing this with kids early on when they're 5 and 6? They don't know anybody. They don't worry about what labels you're wearing. They don't know, they don't have all those relationships yet. So why aren't we doing more of this stuff? And then I kind of, you match up what's happening in the brain with what's practical. So if you think of a physical perspective of physical health, right? We know about, carbs. We know about doing Pilates. We know about stretching. We know about weight training. We know about cardio, all these things. And we have personal trainers. We have gyms and all that kind of stuff. But when we talk about mental health, you go, oh, you go see a counsellor, or, and that's kind of our only go-to position. And that's when I really start to think about me as a counsellor. I would see maybe 6 people a day at best. You're there for an hour, then you don't see them for a week or 2. And so how many people can you get to as a counsellor? So I'm thinking, well, no, we need to do this bigger. We need to think about how we can do this as like we do with physical health. Why aren't we teaching people? Because when I'm dealing with adults, they come to me afterwards and go, wow, I had no idea about my neurons wiring and firing together and my patterns of thinking and all this kind of stuff. So I apply my counselling stuff into a program where I'm saying we need to do more earlier so that they're more robust, they understand, and it's not just about a one-on-one thing. We need to use the group because, this is the problem that people don't, and this is why I think the counselling medical model doesn't work, in the sense that most counsellors, and these are the people that have taught me, that they only deal one-on-one. They don't think about the group. They don't think about how can, interactions and building relationships and being deliberate about how those people interact is such a key for them. So, that's kind of where I went with the program I developed with the school program, and then later the book. So the book's written in a way that it's a story about a person who's about to kill themselves, but he wants people to change things. He wants to see things happen after he's passed and that kind of stuff. And so it's about explaining that and then going, but there's some practical things we need to think about. There's some practical things that we don't do now. Like I use something called the dialogue model. Have you guys heard of the dialogue model?
No, I'd like to know more.
Okay, so the dialogue model comes out of a book called Crucial Conversations and How to Have Them. And I'm happy to send you guys a link to that stuff after. But so the way it works is going, when we're having a conversation, at the moment it's just me talking, but it's not really dialogue, it's probably monologue. But normal conversations is, people talking. And if we feel comfortable with each other, we're not feeling any safety issues, we will have that conversation and we'll feel comfortable. And they talk about throwing information into a blue pool. So when we talk, obviously we're throwing information in, people can hear it, blah, blah, blah. But then there's also a side part to that, which is about the conversation that happens in your own head. And so, you see and hear stuff, you tell yourself a story, you feel a certain way, and then you act. That's how we the sequence of what happens as we're talking. So if we use mental health as an example, people always go to me, why don't people talk about mental health much? But this is where the safety part comes in. If you've been told as a male especially, suck it up, princess, don't show emotion, big boys don't cry, all that. In my mind, I'm going, when I went to dad about being emotional, he took it badly. So we learn pretty quick, right? We take these cues on as kids. And so there's a safety aspect for me to talk to my parent, someone, friends, you big sissy, like if your mates are saying that sort of stuff to you, it sticks in your head. So there's a safety issue with coming out with mental health issues, for example. So that's why a lot of the things that we have, and especially Western society, like obviously you guys in the UK and I'm here in Australia, same kind of thing, right? The stiff upper lip and, suck it up and you're a man and all this stuff. These things actually imprint on our psyche a little bit. So when we then have conversations, and that's why I love the dialogue model, if there's even an element of safety in one person's perspective of what's happening, and this is that I see and hear something, I tell myself a story. If my story that I'm telling myself is, I can see he doesn't want to hear about mental health or he's going to judge me or that kind of stuff, I go to what they do, silence or violence. So you see the old fight or flight element come into a lot of things so much more. And so, when I was dealing with people at the workplace, one of the things I run is a 360-degree feedback tool, which is through human synergistics. But again, the great thing about that is they run these tools all around the world and they can show you that managers around the world that are stuck in fight or flight or defensive mechanisms, either highly aggressive or they're very passive, they all have problems. One, they're not effective as a manager. Two, they're not as effective in their own personal health because these things hold them back. And so, when you see these trends, you start to go, well, we need to change people who get that highly aggressive or highly defensive because there's a fear factor to it. There's always a fear factor. Like someone who's highly timid, it's a people pleaser, the classic people pleaser who just does everything for everybody. Everyone loves them, but then they go home and in their head they're self-loathing. They don't like themselves because they're not feeling comfortable to stand up for themselves. They don't interact in a way that they'd like to. They don't make as many friends as they'd like to. So they kind of beat themselves up. And so I'm talking about the extreme end of this. And then on the other side, you've got these managers who are so red, really angry, just using force, like the Henry Fords about do what you're told, get down, do the job. And so part of their psyche too is ineffective because they have relationship problems with the staff. People have turnover, people don't turn up to work. They're constantly going to HR like me, going, why aren't these people turning up for work? All this kind of stuff. So for me, using all those tools over the years has come to the point where now I'm like, we need to do stuff way earlier with children. So there's a different entry points as people age. So when they're 5 or 6, they're at school, brand new, not a change management model. You have to just work on what's practical, what can we teach them, but more about discussion. So for me, when I use the dialogue model, I'm thinking you're working with teachers and saying, this is the dialogue model. So these kids don't know each other that well. So we're just going to calibrate behavior. So we get everyone in a room after class every day or towards the end of the day. And there's 15 minutes that everyone go around the room, tell us something that you didn't like today. If Johnny pulled your hair or Clint did this or that, they're getting used to having the conversation. So A, it gives them an opportunity. 2, it calibrates behavior that they don't like. Because one of the things is if you're a timid person naturally and someone pulls your hair, you maybe not the person that's going to go and tell someone. And, if you've got stuff happening at home that's not very good, you're not going to talk to teachers about it because you just, that fear factor of that dialogue model still sits there. So it's about encouraging people to talk. It's about helping them get better at that as a skill. Because like I say, I see these people in their 50s, they still don't want to talk to each other and tell each other they're not, performing well or you're treating me badly. Like I did some amazing investigations of people doing horrible things to people. Then you find it's been going on for years. You're grown men working in the steel industry and you're allowing that guy to keep doing that to you and your mates. They'll stand up. Some of them will stand up for themselves and have, say that behavior is poor, but then they'll see their workmate have the same behavior happen to them and they don't stand up for each other. They don't talk about it. That's where the group stuff is so missing in all these programs. And, using the group, I use the Harvey Weinstein example as one I always go. When one woman came out, amazingly, boom, lots came out. Why is that? Because they created safety. Everyone felt unsafe about coming out first. Someone went, I'm going first. I've had enough of this. I made a decision. And then people talk about it and things started to happen. Now he's in jail. Great. Should have been in jail. Like imagine if that first person had come out 20 odd years ago, how many other women would have avoided this stuff? And at the very worst, it's saying, nah, I'm not putting up with this crap. Right. And I mean, I saw some of the stuff that, in the UK at the moment with the lady being killed and raped over there. This is, we can't stand for it. And the amazing thing about all this is there's lots of spin-offs to this. So if I'm an aggressive kid, I end up being a bully. I don't get checked at school. I don't get taught. No one tells me and calibrates that stuff. So I get more, and people laugh about it. Ha ha, I hung it on you because, you got the wrong hair color or whatever it is. And, we don't do this that well. Whereas if you knocked it off every time someone did something that was really nasty, even as a kid, and we're talking about smaller things here, pulling hair and all that stuff, it won't, or it shouldn't escalate to the point where we're dealing with, crazy stuff like what we talked about now. And so for me, I just see that, we're kind of misguided with just thinking that mental health is when you're in trouble, go and get help problem. This is why aren't we doing this for our physical health? People are in the gyms, running, doing all kinds of stuff as 10-year-olds. You take your kids fishing and swimming and all that stuff. And it's great for their mental capacity too. But, what other stuff don't you know about from how your neurons wire and fire together, how you create patterns? When I was dealing with people with PTSD and understanding that certain parts of the brain is better for you to be problem solving with than other parts. Because if you get stuck, emotions aren't bad. This is where people get stuck, right? They go, oh, but you're getting emotional. We all have emotions. We're human beings. But the problem is people don't understand that, it's only when you get stuck and it becomes a loop and then you start to spiral, the chemicals in your brain are changing, your cortisol levels going up, all this stuff. And then you go, well, what can you do to change those things? So one of the things I wrote about recently, which is an article, I talked about being an unconsciously incompetent parent, but it's not about incompetence, it's about not knowing. It's just a lack of knowledge. There's a lot of stuff out there people can go and find out, but we just don't, because mental health's always been that thing we don't talk about. So there's the safety element of talking about mental health, and people would rather avoid it. They go, I don't know much about that. But why? Why don't you know? Why don't you want to know more? Why do you realize it's not as complex as you think it is? And so I think that puts people off a little bit. It's that taboo subject to talk about, but it's also quite, if we not only talked about it, found out more about it. I'm not saying I'm the font of all knowledge on this, right? There's many ways to the top of this mountain, but understanding even different things, like why do people with pets live longer than people who don't have pets? Well, your oxytocin levels go up every time. I showed you my puppy just before, right? When I show a puppy to people, they all go, oh, look, a puppy, it just makes you feel happy, and their hands go like this, and they smile, and it's amazing, just a dog being introduced into that little group. So all these little things can help us with our mental health if we know about it, if we talk about it. My whole message here is about making people consciously incompetent, where they go, wow, I didn't know any of this. I didn't know any of this. Wow, I need to know more. Well, how can I help my child? I mean, the difficult part for me, and this is the hard part, is if the parents aren't good to their kids, it's always going to be uphill, right? But most parents don't know enough about this. I've had people, in part of my book, when I was doing the research, talking to people who've lost kids and, through suicide. And so a lot of them are great parents. The kid just doesn't, something happened, or someone bullied them and they didn't want to talk about it for whatever reason they didn't. And then this is again where some of that safety aspects come into it. And so for me, it's about saying to parents, whatever you do, if you want to know one tip on helping suicide prevention with your child, is have the conversation to create safety, that they can come to you with anything. So look, I've called it a suck it up princess in the past. I'm wrong on that. I'm big enough to understand that I want you, no matter what's going on in your life, to come and talk to me and your mum. And that's it. We will always have your back. No matter what it is, we will deal with it. My daughter did that, when she was 16. And she was being bullied at school. And, we made some pretty quick decisions, moved town, moved schools. We weren't mucking around with that. I'm not saying everyone's in the same position as I was at the time, but I've been there. And thankfully, she did come and talk to us, felt comfortable to have that. And so, you don't want to muck that up. So I just think, when we're thinking about how we do this stuff, there's multiple layers to it. And the key part is starting with parents being knowledgeable, starting with teachers being knowledgeable, and just using practical things to help with all of those things, And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with the programs I run.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's all amazing. Wow, I don't even know what do you have to say that to Vanessa, because there's so much that it just makes me, I'm we've got a child, and it's just making me think of my work as well. It's making me think of, how can I do this? I just want to know a little bit more about did you say blue, sea and red, or something blue and red or something like that?
Red, red, blue brain.
Yeah. What does that mean?
What's that?
What does it mean?
So, okay. So when I run sessions, red brain, blue brain sessions, I really talk about people understanding the amygdala-driven emotions. And I call that red brain, because when we get angry, we get sad, we get defensive. And then what I'm trying to do is, so when I'm talking to someone who's got PTSD, for example, I'll give you a good example. So a police officer had a gun pointed at his head, right? Clearly traumatic, had the experience, was able to take the gun off the person, all that stuff. And then he seemed fine for a few weeks, but then he started coming to see me as the counsellor and saying, I'm turned to pieces. I'm worried about what could have happened. I'm thinking, my wife and my kids would have been without a father and a husband. I could have been dead. Blah. So this is where his brain was going, and his thought process was going. So for me, it was about saying, okay, what I'm going to try to do to help you change this. So that event has gone. It doesn't exist. It exists in a memory now. Your brain has that memory, and this is the memory. And when you think about it, you go into a certain process. So your brain thinks it's happening again, right? And so you go into what I call red brain. So when you think about it, it takes you to red brain. Amygdala-driven emotions. This is why I'm saying if you get stuck in that emotion, it becomes a problem. So he had a loop where he would try and put it out of his head, go surfing and do all the stuff, come home, settle down, try to go to sleep, and his subconscious just keeps throwing this same event in his head. And then he'd go into red brain, which is for him was feeling sad and crying and just couldn't deal. And I'm talking about a burly police officer, been around 20 years kind of stuff. So he's got also the macho ego part of that persona that he likes to project. But now he's a crying, blubbering mess, and his wife's like, who the hell is this guy kind of stuff. So for him, there was a shame element to the way he's reacting. And there's also just what was happening. So when I say red brain, I'm going, this is a red brain response. So what we need to do, so when you think about this event, your neurons are wiring and firing the same way, and you're getting adrenaline going into your body, you're getting a fight or flight response, you're thinking that way, and you're dragging yourself back into it. So that's the loop he's going into. So when I talk about red brain, blue, I'm saying what we need to do, if you want to problem solve, you've got to use your prefrontal cortex. That's what I call blue brain. So no matter what we're doing, and again, many ways to the top of this mountain, no matter what you're doing, we've got to take you from being in red and moving over to blue, focus. And the way we can do that is there's a couple of different ways. So I used to get them to do a thoughts diary. And I'll say, okay, all I want you to do for the next week is when that thought pops in your head, I want you to write it down, and I want you to just say how you felt about it. And the reason I do that is analytical work is done by the prefrontal cortex. So if you're going into red, which is what I'm normally doing, but now you have to stop yourself and go, oh, it's popped in my head. I have to think about this. I have to use a different part of the brain. It actually stops some of those neurons wiring and firing and taking you all the way over, but you're moving over now into a blue brain space where you're thinking about it. You're writing something about it. So it's instead of being 100% of the same wiring and firing, it might be 95 the first few days. Then it goes to 90. And so you're trying to change it. So when we think about any habits, our habits are exactly the same. We wire and fire together. Oh, I'm stressed, I'm gonna have a smoke. I'm stressed, I'm gonna do this, or I have a booze or whatever. So, understanding how the brain works in your loop is so important to them getting it. So when I'm working with someone one-on-one, I'm saying, hey, whatever we do, we've got to get you from red into blue. Now, some people find religion, some people go running, some people want to sit by the ocean, some people go and play with a dog. Anything that changes that is important to understand. So, for me, it's about you finding out what works for you. You might hate running, but someone else loves it. So that works for them, or you might. So for me, again, unconsciously incompetent, right? If you don't know this stuff and you don't know what you're trying to change, what you're trying to change is your focus. And I'm not talking about masking it, like just getting on the piss and, getting blind drunk every night. This is about proactive things that can work for you, but at least explore them, at least think about them and go, okay, that used to bug me, but now I'm going to do this, this, and this, or I'm going to try this, this, and this. Because one of the things, I love this quote, right? I can't remember who said it, but it says, if you're going through hell, don't stop, keep going, right? This is the keep going part. Why stay there? If you hate where you are and hate how you're feeling about something, do something. But if you don't know what it is, this is you know what I mean? So find things, read things. The way I wrote my book is a lot of QR codes all through the book linking to people just finding out stuff. So for me, it's about just getting people at least thinking about ways, or you go, shit, my son or daughter's really struggling. What can I do as a parent? And most times I just go, oh, no, I'll send them to the psychologist, send them to a psychiatrist. Now, if they don't get on well with that person, usually they're an adult. So I'm talking kids and adults, right? You're not going to deal with another kid, right? No psychiatrist or psychologist is under 25. So there's already that gap. There's already a problem in the sense of that. So, understanding conversations, talking, working together, and just looking at all these different options is the key to it, and that's where I think, long term, if we're going to really nail this stuff, that's the conversation. Everyone keeps going, like, I don't know about you guys in the UK, but here we have Are You OK Day. It's great about awareness. Oh, let's, today we'll all put some money together and have Are You OK and a big poster and all this stuff. Fantastic initiative, but what are you doing? What are we doing? Where's the doing bit? It frustrates me a lot because, you kind of go, got all these organisations, we've got, and they look well-intended, but are they effective? Are they doing what I'm kind of suggesting here and going, and the problem is they're all counsellors. They're all counsellors. They've come, I've been there. I've been the counsellor and I've been the one-on-one guy. And you go, but they all, I hate to say it, but
it's exactly the same here, Clint. It's exactly the same. So one of the reasons why I named when I started this charity, so I started the charity on the back of my own personal mental health experience. And I named it Time to Talk because that's our day. It's Time to Talk Day. And it's a day where everybody goes on about how, you must reach out and you need to talk about these things. But then after the day, nothing is done. Nothing is, and I'm like you, I'm a doer. And I'm like, but you're all talking about mental health and we're losing children. We're losing nearly 6,000 people a year commit suicide in the UK. These people could have been saved if somebody just stood up and said, right, I'm going to try and do something about this.
Yeah, and that's just the people that are suiciding. There's a lot of people that just struggle and their lives are horrible. They don't kill themselves, but they're horrible. They live in fear. They don't go anywhere. They don't do anything. They're not contributing. And so, they're not even in the stats. This is the numbers you're talking about who've actually gone and done it.
Yeah.
What about all these people who, it just really bothers me.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you and I are cut from the same cloth, I think, because it is, something that I very much, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I'm reaching out and trying to give people platforms. And I'm very lucky now that I've started working with some of the council-led projects. So,
awesome.
which is why sometimes I don't always get a chance to be on the podcast because I've got
fair enough.
Yeah. But I'm really glad I came on this one, and because I think that the whole what you're talking about is so needed, and it's not just in Australia. I think it needs to, something like this needs to come to the UK because we are quite behind in our mental health services, and this is one of the reasons why I've been really pushing for more of these kind of programs, because there really isn't anything like this in the UK that you're talking about.
And to be fair, there's not that here in Australia. I'm fairly new, and a lot of people look at me like, okay, and it's different. I know it's different because well, it's not that. It's just like, challenge the status quo. Unfortunately, when you're talking to professors of psychiatry, you're kind of saying, mate, I don't think you know everything you think you know, and you're and so that's not always. So their ego needs to take a look. It's about. I'm not saying I know everything, but I'm saying we need a different approach, right? Absolutely. And let's look at the different approaches. And if I'm wrong, I'll wear it. And over the years, I've changed even some of my own ways of thinking about that. Mindfulness and all that kind of stuff are fairly new to me because I've never really practiced it, but now I also understand how all these things can enhance. I was listening to a podcast not long ago. It was only this year. I can't remember the professor's name, but he's a UK professor, and he was saying that they did clinical trials, and nearly all the psych theories all have some kind of tick for some things, but nothing works for everybody. There's no one size fits all. Exactly. So I'm saying we need to looking at what works for you. Like some people like weight training, if you look at a physical perspective, and that works for them. That gets their body the way they want it. And then there's other people who just swim all day, and that's their body type. It's no different from mental health. It's whatever works, and the cultural background so important too, because I was talking to a lady recently who was an islander, and she had domestic violence in her life, and it was really bad. But again, having conversations changed it for her, and changing from red into blue was what really made things change for her life. She then started thinking about solutions, started talking to people that were key, and they backed her up, and now she's free of her ex-husband, and 10 years on, and she's a counselor now, and so these things are so important.
Interesting you to say, because I was a guest speaker recently on a peer support group over here, which is but they're run by volunteers. Stop it! It's my dog that's biting my hand. And they were talking about mental health within the South Asian community, because there is a lot of cultural barriers within that community. So I was guest speaking on that, and it was really interesting to hear. And obviously, I'm hoping to do more work with the South Asian community on raising more awareness, especially within domestic violence. Some of the women, it was from a peer support group for that. But no, you're absolutely right, and I think I always used to say, and I have tried to challenge the police service over just in my area, to say that you cannot teach mental health theoretically, and by using people's lived experiences, it gives you a different angle of understanding mental health, and how, like you say, how to find the fit for that person. And it isn't a one size fits all, and you can't just learn these set questions or set things you will say to somebody who's in crisis, because that person's crisis is very different to the other person's. But yeah, so I was just saying to Fire, I'd love to obviously keep in touch, and possibly look at some point of when we can travel, maybe a conversation, guest speaker, get you over here talking about your program.
Happy to do it.
I think
happy to do it. And look, I think you're 100% right. Like, one of the things that I guess for me is just about spreading the word. Like, it's about ask questions. Like, people go, oh, what's one of the things that you can, what's one of the best things you can talk to about and help someone who's feeling in a bad place? And for me, it's about getting them as the person to go, are you liking where you are? Because when you make that decision and go, no, I don't like this, I hate this, I hate not being able to go outside. Asking questions is it's a blue brain experience, right? When you ask the questions, and I keep going red brain, blue brain, but if you're stuck in, I hate my life, I don't enjoy this, but you sit down and ask the question of yourself, and there's a structured kind of way, you kind of have to come up with a solution. I mean, Tony Robbins talks about this stuff. This isn't all my own stuff, right? But ultimately, it's about asking that question. Do I really enjoy my life? Do I really want to not be able to go out? Do I really want to feel this angry every time someone ticks me off even a little bit, because I've got that harebrained trigger that I'm just angry at everything? And so, asking those questions, again, blue brain experience is asking the right part of the brain. Okay, what can I do? What can I do? Or sorry, probably the best one is, how can I make this experience work for me in a positive way? Lots of people, I'm sure, I know I've read some of your profile stuff, you've had negative things happen, trauma, all that stuff. I was abused as a child as well, right? And so you kind of go, you can go one of two ways, right? You went I'm not taking this crap anymore. I'm going to do this. I'm going to help other people. And so your focus went from red to blue. And I'm sure when you go through your own experience, you'll find that there was that point where you were in the doldrums, you were in that bad place, but you went, no, something needs to change for me. I need to do something. And when your brain went from there to there, things start to happen. You made things happen. You're doing podcasts. You're now working with the council. All these things happen. Same with this lady with domestic violence, right? And it's amazing the mindset, the energy changes. Your energy goes up. You now got a purpose. You're feeling like you got to do stuff, right? And so, you know, again, many ways to the top of the mountain. We don't all want to go through bad experiences to kind of get here. But if you are, do something else. When in hell, get the hell, just keep going. Do something, right? Whatever it is. And at least if you're thinking, if you start thinking, I'm going to get out of red into blue, that's it. Whatever going to work for me, what can I do, right? And when you start asking the question, your brain will come up with solutions. That's the beauty about how our brains work. And so, you know, all those things are such a positive thought process, if you like.
Absolutely. I am going to have to say goodbye, if that's okay, because I have a meeting starting in 30
All
minutes.
good. So nice to meet.
It was so lovely to meet you, Clint, and thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. And
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Right.
The other thing I wanted to end on, Clint, was where can we actually find your book?
So you can get on, just Google it. It's through Amazon. I should probably get a copy. Hey, I'll show you a picture. Hang on.
Yeah, do that. That'd be brilliant.
So it's called Lighting the Blue Flame. Sorry, it's a bit shiny.
No, it's all good.
So yeah, it's actually a UK-based publisher, so it's probably easier for you guys to get than for me to get. So yeah, if you Google it, Amazon, Goodreads, they all have it. Like I said, Austin McCall is my publisher, which is in the UK. So anyone in the UK that's interested to probably get it a lot easier than we can over here. So yeah, and look, the other thing is if people want to look me up, I do have my LinkedIn account, as you know. I've also got my website, which is in my LinkedIn account anyway. So, you know, there's other free stuff on there. I did an ebook as a self-help guide for people, which was based on blogs I did for some ex-services guys here in Australia, and we'd had some friends that had committed suicide. So, look, I'm open to people wanting to talk. I'm open to people wanting, you know, to do stuff. Happy to be talking about this all the time because it's obviously something that I hold dear to my heart, and I just think, you know, however we can help each other, I'm more than happy to be involved.
Oh, well, I'm hoping you can come to the UK, or even better, I can go to Australia.
Oh.
There's not much here. I'd love to come over there, but
well, I think with the restrictions, we're way better off than you, poor
buggers.
Oh
gosh, tell us about it. But thank you so much for your time, for the time difference, for all the information, because I'm buzzing. Like, I'm not even joking. Me and Vanessa, when we were slightly cut off, were like, we need to know about this. Like, this is amazing. Like, it's just a different way of thinking, but it's a way that we should have been thinking a long time ago. And
I agree.
I think it's amazing. And I hope that your dad has a wonderful birthday. Congratulations to his 70th birthday.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, guys.